The night sky burned with silver fire when the ship fell from the stars. It tore through the clouds like a wounded bird, leaving behind a long trail of smoke that painted the heavens. In a quiet valley, far from the noise of any city, a man named Daniel looked up from his field and saw the sky split open. The earth trembled beneath his boots. He had never seen anything like it. Daniel was a farmer. His world was made of soil, sun, and rain. His hands were rough from work, and his life was simple. He lived alone in a small wooden house surrounded by golden fields. Every day, he worked from dawn to dusk, speaking only to the wind and the trees. He thought the world beyond his valley had forgotten him, and, maybe, had forgotten it too. But that night, something from another world crashed into his peace. When he reached the place where the light had fallen, he found a ship, half buried in the ground. The metal glowed faintly blue, humming softly like it was still alive. The air smelled of burning stars and cold metal. As he stepped closer, he heard a weak sound of voice, trembling and soft. Inside, he found her. She was not human. Her skin was pale as moonlight, with faint golden lines running beneath it like veins of light. Her eyes shimmered with silver, and her hair floated as if touched by invisible wind. She looked fragile, yet there was something powerful in her presence, something ancient and royal. Daniel lifted her carefully, afraid she might break in his arms. She whispered something in a strange language, her eyes full of pain and fear. He didn't understand, but he didn't need to. He could see she was hurt, lost, and alone. He took her home. For days, she slept on his bed while he watched over her. He cleaned her wounds, changed her bandages, and made her soup she could not eat. Slowly she healed. When she finally opened her eyes, he saw both wonder and fear in them. She tried to speak, and her voice was like music, but he could not understand. So he only smiled and offered her water. Eventually she learned a few words in his language. Her name was Lyra. She told him she had fallen from the stars. She said she was not meant to be here, but her ship had been attacked by raiders before crashing. Daniel did not ask questions. He just said, "You're safe now." Lyra did not know what to make of him. He was quiet, humble, and gentle. His home was small, but clean and warm. He never looked at her with fear or greed. To him, she was not an alien or a princess, just someone who needed help. That simplicity touched her heart more deeply than she expected. Each morning, Daniel would wake before sunrise to work in the fields. Lyra would watch from the porch, wrapped in one of his old blankets, as the light touched the earth. He taught her how to plant seeds and how to listen to the rhythm of the wind. She laughed for the first time in years when she tried to milk a cow and ended up covered in it. The days passed softly, like a gentle song. The stars above no longer looked so lonely to her. Sometimes at night, Lyra would tell him stories of her world of crystal cities floating in the clouds and gardens that bloomed under two suns. Daniel listened quietly, his eyes soft, though he never spoke of his own past. She noticed the scars on his hands, the quiet sadness in his eyes, and wondered what kind of life he had left behind. One evening, as they watched the fire together, Lyra said softly, "You could ask me who I really am." Daniel looked at her and smiled. "I don't need to. Whoever you were before, you're safe here now." That answer made her heart ache. She had been surrounded by people all her life, servants, guards, advisors, but none had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever looked at her as just Lyra, in his small home, on a forgotten planet. She found something she had never known even in her palace of light. Peace. She did not tell him yet that she was a princess. She did not tell him that her people ruled worlds. She wanted him to see her not as royalty, but as a person, and slowly, she began to forget the weight of her crown. Under the quiet stars, an alien princess and a simple man shared a life made of silence, warmth, and small joys. Neither knew that their meeting would change the fate of two worlds. For now, it was enough that they had each other. And as the wind carried the scent of the fields and the hum of distant stars, Lyra thought perhaps, just perhaps, she had finally come home. Time moved slowly in the valley. Days turned into weeks, and weeks became months. The world outside seemed far away, almost like a dream that had faded from memory. Daniel and Lyra built a quiet life together. He taught her the ways of Earth, how to plant vegetables, how to care for animals, and how to listen to the heartbeat of the land. She, in turn, brought color into his lonely world. Her laughter echoed through the fields, bright and warm, like sunlight breaking through clouds. Lyra had never known such peace. Back on her home planet, everything was duty and formality. Every smile was a mask. Every word had a hidden meaning. But here, Daniel's honesty was simple and clear. He never tried to impress her. He never asked for anything in return, just shared what he had, no matter how little. Sometimes they would sit together on the old porch at night. The stars above were sharp and endless. Lyra would look at them for a long time, her eyes full of memories. Daniel would glance at her and see the quiet sadness that never left her completely. "Do you miss your home?" he asked once. Lyra smiled softly. "Sometimes. But when I look at the stars, I feel like they are watching me. Like they're whispering something I can't quite hear." Daniel looked up too. "Maybe they're just saying goodnight." She laughed gently. Maybe. But deep inside, she knew those whispers were not just dreams. She could feel it in her bones, the faint pulse of the galaxy still searching for her. Her people were out there, and if they ever found her, they would not be kind. One cold morning, Lyra woke before dawn. Daniel was still asleep beside the fireplace. The wind outside carried a strange sound, a low hum, deep and metallic. She stepped out of the house, her heart racing. High above the fields, she saw a flash of silver light moving silently across the sky. It disappeared behind the clouds within seconds, but she knew what it was. A scout ship. Her chest tightened. It was her people, the Varan Empire. They had found her trail. Lyra said nothing that day. She worked beside Daniel, pretending everything was normal, but inside she was trembling. She didn't want to lose what she had found here. She didn't want to be taken back to the cold halls of her empire, to the endless ceremonies and empty smiles. That night, she sat by the fire, unable to sleep. Daniel noticed her silence. He poured her a cup of tea and handed it to her. "You've been quiet," he said softly. Lyra stared at the flames. "Daniel," she whispered, "what would you do if someone came to take me away?" He frowned slightly. "Take you away? Who would want to do that?" She looked at him, her eyes glistening. "My people might come. They don't know this world, or they don't understand love or peace like you do. To them, I am not Lyra. I am a symbol. A royal bloodline they cannot lose." Daniel was silent for a while. He looked into the fire, the reflection of flames dancing in his eyes. Then he reached over and held her hand gently. "Then they'll have to go through me first," he said quietly. Lyra blinked back tears. "You don't understand, Daniel. They're powerful. They have armies, ships, weapons that could burn this world." He smiled faintly. "I've seen enough power in my life to know one thing: it never wins against what's right." Something about the way he said it made her pause. There was a quiet strength in his voice, like he was speaking from experience. For a brief moment, she saw something in him, a shadow of another man, one who had seen war and walked away from it. But Daniel said no more. He only squeezed her hand and whispered, "You're safe here, Lyra, I promise." In the days that followed, Lyra tried to live as before, but her heart was restless. She often looked at the horizon, fearing the moment when the sky would burn again. She began to notice the way Daniel's eyes sometimes drifted far away, as if remembering a life he had left behind. Once, when she asked about his past, he only said, "I used to be someone else, but that man needed to disappear." Lyra did not press him. She understood the feeling of wanting to leave behind an old world. Perhaps that was what drew them together, two souls escaping the weight of their names. Still, the whispers from the stars grew louder. She could almost hear the soft hum of engines in her dreams, the voices calling her back to the throne she no longer wanted. And every night Daniel would sit beside her quietly, unaware that the peace they loved so much was standing on the edge of being broken. As the moon rose high and painted the fields with silver light, Lyra leaned against Daniel and whispered, "If the stars come for me, don't fight them." He didn't answer, just looked at the sky, and for a moment there was something old and fierce in his gaze. something that made the stars seem a little less bright. The morning arrived quietly, with dew sparkling on the grass and the sun painting the fields gold. Daniel was already in the barn, tending to the animals, when Lyra stepped outside. She thought the day would be like any other, peaceful, simple, safe. But the sky had other plans. A silver streak split the horizon, moving faster than any bird she had ever seen. Her heart froze. The clouds rippled, and a massive ship descended, its hull glinting like molten metal in the sunlight. The ground trembled as it hovered over the fields, casting long shadows across the crops. Lyra grabbed Daniel's arm, panic gripping her chest. "They're here," she whispered. Daniel's eyes narrowed, calm but sharp. He set down his tools and walked toward the open field. His steps were steady, deliberate, and for the first time in months. Lyra saw a look on his face she had never noticed before, something powerful and ancient. The ship's doors opened with a hiss, and armored soldiers began to descend. They moved in perfect synchronization, their eyes cold, calculating. Lyra froze. These were her people, the Veyron Empire. Their armor gleamed under the sun, and their weapons hummed with energy. Every instinct screamed that they were dangerous. The commander stepped forward, tall and imposing. He stopped a few meters from Lyra and Daniel. "Princess Lyra," he said, his voice echoing with authority, "you are to return with us immediately. Your marriage to this human is forbidden. You are needed in the Empire." Lyra's heart ached. "I will not leave," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "This is my home now. I am not your princess anymore." "I am Lyra of Earth," the commander's eyes hardened. "You forget your duty. You are more than Lyra. You are the heir of a great empire. You do not have the right to choose this life." Daniel stepped in front of her. He did not speak at first. He looked at the soldiers, calm and measured. Then he turned to Lyra and gently took her hand. "You will not go anywhere unless you choose to," he said softly. But there was steel in his voice. The soldiers advanced, and one reached for Lyra. Daniel didn't hesitate. He walked to the old chest in the corner of the barn. With one hand he lifted the lid. Inside rested a sword, unlike anything Lyra had ever seen. Its blade was black as night, with veins of silver running through it. Glowing faintly, the soldiers stopped in their tracks, confusion flashing across their faces. Daniel picked up the sword. He held it as if it weighed nothing, and for a moment Lyra's breath caught. There was something familiar about the way he carried it, as though it had always belonged in his hands. The commander frowned. "That weapon, how did you come to possess it?" Daniel's voice was quiet, but every word carried authority. "Because I forged it." Lyra's eyes widened. "You forged it?" she asked, barely believing it. Daniel nodded, his gaze steady on the approaching soldiers. "Long ago? Before this life, before I settled here, I made this for a reason. It was not meant to remain hidden forever." The commander's expression changed. His tone softened slightly, but only with suspicion. "Humanus Praetor," he said slowly. You are the last guardian of the Outer Wars. You were supposed to be gone." Daniel said nothing. The name stirred memories deep in him, memories he had buried alongside the life he left behind. Lyra had never known that the simple man she loved had once been a legend, a protector who walked among the stars and faced wars that could destroy planets. For a moment, time seemed to pause. The soldiers, the ship, the entire Valiant, all waited. Daniel planted the sword in the ground. Its glow spread outward, soft but unmistakable. "I am not here to fight," he said, his voice calm, carrying a quiet weight. "She stays because she chooses peace. Leave, and no harm will come to any of you." The soldiers looked at each other, uneasy. They had been trained to obey strength, and strength radiated from him not as raw power, but as presence, as certainty. Lyra took a step forward, fear and awe mixing in her chest. She had thought she knew Daniel. She thought he was simple, gentle, and ordinary. But now, she saw a glimpse of the man he once was, someone who had faced unimaginable danger and still chosen restraint. The commander's jaw tightened. The Empire does not negotiate with traitors. Daniel's hand rested lightly on the hilt of the sword. His calm gaze did not waver. Then perhaps it should learn. The soldiers froze. Even the mighty ship seemed to pause, as if the valley itself held its breath. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. She had loved Daniel for his gentleness, his quiet kindness, his humanity. And now she realized that the man she loved had the heart of a warrior who would stand for what was right. Not out of hatred or anger, but out of love. And in that moment, she understood the truth. The man she married was far from simple. He was extraordinary. The valley was silent, except for the soft hum of the wind, and the faint glow of Daniel's sword planted firmly in the earth. Lyra clutched his hand, her fingers trembling, yet she felt safer than ever. She had thought she knew him. But the man standing before the Varen soldiers was someone entirely new, someone larger than life, yet still her Daniel. The commander's eyes narrowed. "You dare carry this weapon and claim peace?" he demanded, his voice sharp. "Do you know what this is? Who you are?" Daniel's gaze did not waver. "I know exactly what it is," he said, voice calm, steady. "And I know who I am." Lyra's heart pounded. She had never seen Daniel speak with such certainty. It was as if the man she loved had shed years of quiet and hidden strength, revealing the truth beneath. "You are Humanus Praetor," the commander said, almost in disbelief. "The last guardian of the outer wars." How Daniel straightened, the sunlight glinting off the sword's black and silver veins. "Yes," he said simply. "I am he. But that was another life. I am no longer a soldier. I am a farmer. I am a man who loves his wife and protects his home. Nothing more." Soldiers shifted uneasily. Even their training could not prepare them for this. A human, alone, standing against the might of the Varen Empire, and yet radiating power without threatening to use it. Lyra stepped forward, her voice shaking but resolute. "You see him as a human? Yes," she said to the commander. "But to me, he is everything. He is not a soldier, or a weapon, or a legend. He is Daniel. He chose peace, even when he could have used his strength to fight and conquer." Daniel turned to her, their eyes meeting. There was a moment of quiet understanding between them. Silent bond, stronger than any army, stronger than any weapon. The commander's face darkened. "The Empire does not allow defiance," he said, raising his hand to signal the soldiers forward. "You will come with us, Lyra." Daniel's hand closed around the hilt of the sword. He did not lift it, yet every muscle in his body held readiness, a promise that nothing would pass him. His calm, measured presence was more terrifying than any weapon. "You will not touch her," he said. "Not today. Not ever." One soldier stepped forward, hesitant. The sword's glow shifted, almost alive, pulsing softly along the blade. Daniel did not strike. He did not need to. His eyes alone carried the weight of countless battles, of decisions made in the dark of space, of worlds saved and lost. The soldier froze, unsure whether to advance or retreat. Lyra's chest swelled with awe. She had always admired Daniel's kindness, his quiet patience. But now she understood that his gentleness was a choice made by a man who had seen the cost of war firsthand. He could destroy, yet he chose mercy. The commander stepped closer, his voice low but firm. "You were one of us once. Why throw it all away for a human?" Daniel's lips curved in a faint, sad smile. "Because some battles are worth more than victory. Because some lives are worth protecting, not conquering. Because love is stronger than fear, stronger than war." The words hung in the air like music, soft and powerful. The soldiers shifted uneasily, caught between duty and awe. Even the commander hesitated, his eyes betraying uncertainty for the first time. Lyra squeezed Daniel's hand. "You are extraordinary," she whispered. "I always knew you were different, but now I see the truth. The man I married is not simple. He is magnificent." Daniel lowered his gaze to her, warmth flooding his eyes. "I am still just a man, Lyra, a man who loves you and will do everything to protect you. That is all I am." For a long moment, the world held its breath. The ships above seemed smaller, the the soldiers less threatening. Daniel's calm authority and unwavering love created a force that no weapon could match. Lyra realized that the peace they had built in this quiet valley was stronger than any army. She understood, finally, that Daniel's strength was not in the sword or in the legend, it was in his heart, and that heart beat for her alone. The valley was alive with tension, yet a strange calm lingered. Daniel stood in the center, sword in hand, but he did not raise it. Its black and silver blade pulsed faintly, as if it were alive, reflecting the power that Daniel carried quietly within him. Lyra clutched his sleeve, her eyes wide with fear and awe. She had thought the danger would overwhelm them, but she felt safe not because of weapons or armies, but because of Daniel himself. The Vayaran soldiers advanced slowly, their movements precise and mechanical. They expected resistance, perhaps even fear. Instead, they were met with a man who did not flinch, whose presence seemed to fill the entire valley. The sunlight danced on the sword, and the wind carried a soft hum that made the soldiers hesitate. Daniel spoke, his voice steady and calm. "I am not here to fight you," he said. "She stays because she chooses peace. You will harm no one today." The soldiers paused. They had trained for combat, for discipline, for war, but nothing had prepared them for this. A single human, standing in defiance, yet not threatening anyone. Radiating strength without cruelty. Lyra watched him, her chest swelling with pride and love. She had always admired his gentleness, his patience, and now she realized that these qualities were not signs of weakness. They were the true measure of his strength. In every word, in every stance, he commanded respect. The commander took a step forward, his voice edged with authority. "The Empire does not tolerate defiance," he said. "You will come with us, Princess Lyra. No more delays." Daniel did not move. His calm gaze met the commander's eyes. "You may have armies and ships," he said, "but I have something you do not. The choice to protect without causing harm. I am not your enemy, but I will not let you take her." The soldiers tensed. They could see the truth in his words. The sword in his hands did not need to strike. The authority he carried was enough to make even trained warriors reconsider their actions. Lyra stepped closer to Daniel. "You do not need to fight," she whispered. "They cannot harm us if you do not let them." Ow. Daniel smiled softly. "I will show them another way," he said. He raised his sword slightly, just enough for the light to reflect across the valley, then pressed a small button on the hilt. A soft wave of energy radiated outward. It was not destructive, it did not harm or wound, but it created a barrier, a field that made the soldiers' weapons useless. Rifles and energy blasters dropped harmlessly to the ground. The soldiers froze, unsure of what to do. Their power was gone, their training ineffective. Daniel stood firm, his calm presence stronger than any weapon. Lyra realized then that he was not just protecting her physically, he was protecting the choice they had made together. Their right to live in peace, and he was doing it without causing harm. The commander looked at Daniel, disbelief etched across his face. You could destroy us all," he said softly. Daniel shook his head. "I could," he replied, "but I choose not to. Some battles are won not with violence, but with restraint. Some victories are in protecting what you love, not in conquering what you fear." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. She had never been prouder of the man she married. He was not just strong or brave, he was wise, compassionate, and true. Had taken the legend of a warrior and turned it into something extraordinary. A force for peace. The soldiers looked at each other, unsure of what to do next. The commander's jaw tightened, then slowly, he stepped back.
Apps.
"We have underestimated you," he said. Daniel lowered his sword slightly, though the pulse of light still shimmered along its edge. He had not raised it in anger, but in hope that peace could prevail. Even in the face of overwhelming power, Lyra wrapped her arms around him, her heart pounding. She realized something important. True strength was not measured by the ability to destroy, but by the courage to protect and the wisdom to choose love over war. In that quiet valley, under the rising sun, a human and an alien princess stood together. And for the first time, the stars seemed a little kinder, the wind a little gentler. They had not just survived the moment, they had shown what humanity could be: brave, compassionate, and extraordinary. And it was enough to make even an empire pause. The valley had fallen into an uneasy calm after the standoff. The Varen soldiers had retreated, their weapons disabled by the pulse of Daniel's sword. Yet the air remained thick with tension. Lyra sat on the porch steps, her hands trembling slightly, her eyes fixed on the horizon. The golden field stretched before her. She could not ignore the weight of her past calling from the stars. Daniel came to sit beside her, placing a gentle hand on hers. His calm presence seemed to anchor her, yet she could feel the restlessness in his gaze. She knew he was thinking of the Empire, of the world he had once walked among as Humanus Praetor. "You could leave me," Lyra whispered, her voice barely carrying. "You could stand with your people and return to your world. You don't owe me this." Daniel shook his head, his dark eyes reflecting the first rays of the morning sun. "I have left that life behind," he said softly. "That man, the soldier, the legend is gone. All that matters now is you, Lyra, and this life we've built." Lyra turned to him, tears welling. "But they are still out there. My empire, my people. They will not forget. They will keep coming. You could lose everything if you stay." Daniel smiled faintly, a mixture of sadness and determination in his expression. "Perhaps," he admitted, "but everything I had was not mine. Everything I am now, I choose to be. And I choose you." Lyra's heart ached at the weight of his words. She had thought she knew what courage was, but this quiet, unwavering commitment was far more powerful than any warrior she had ever known. The wind carried a distant hum, the faint sound of ships returning, reminding them that their peace was fragile. Lyra stood, her small frame resolute. "I have to make a choice," she said. "I cannot abandon my people completely, but I cannot leave you either. I choose this life with you." Daniel stood as well, and for the first time, she noticed the subtle shift in him. The quiet farmer she had married had always seemed ordinary, yet now she could see the layers beneath the man who had fought battles she could not imagine, who had carried worlds on his shoulders, who had chosen mercy over vengeance every single time. "You are extraordinary," she said softly, reaching for his face. "I thought I was choosing a simple life, but I see now that it is extraordinary because it is ours." Daniel's hand covered hers. "It is extraordinary because of you," he said. "Because you trust me. Because you believe in peace. That is what makes a life worth living. Not crowns or ships, but love and choice." Lyra's chest swelled with emotion. She realized that she had been afraid not of leaving the Empire, but of losing the man who had shown her the true meaning of courage. She had thought a hero was someone who fought battles and wielded power. She now knew a hero was someone who chose to protect, to love, and to stand for what was right, even when no one else could. The commander's voice echoed faintly in her mind, but it no longer had power over her. She had made her decision. She would stay on this planet, in this quiet valley. With the man who had taught her the value of choice and peace, Daniel lifted the sword from the ground, holding it so that the sunlight reflected off its veins of silver and black. "I have kept this for centuries," he said, "but it is not the sword that protects us. It is the heart that wields it, and the choices we make with it." Lyra leaned against him, her tears falling freely now. "I never thought I would find a home," she whispered. "But I have. I have found it with you." Daniel wrapped his arms around her, holding her as the morning light bathed them in warmth. The wind rustled through the fields, carrying a sense of promise, a promise that they could face whatever came together. Above them, the sky remained vast and full of possibilities. The Empire could send its ships, the stars could whisper their warnings, but for now the valley was theirs. Their life was theirs, and in that quiet, golden moment, Lyra understood the greatest truth she had ever known. True courage is not in fighting wars or conquering worlds. True courage is in choosing love, peace, and loyalty. Even when the universe itself seems to call for something else, she had chosen Daniel, and Daniel had chosen her, and together, they were unstoppable not because of the sword, the stars, or the Empire, but because of something far stronger: humanity. The days that followed were quiet, but the valley seemed alive with a new kind of energy. Lyra and Daniel worked together in the fields, planted new seeds, and repaired fences. Life was simple, yet it was rich with meaning, each sunrise painted the sky in golds and pinks, reminding them that peace, though fragile, could be beautiful. Lyra often looked at Daniel as he worked. To the world, he was a farmer, a simple man living a modest life, but she knew the truth. He was a hero, a man who had faced unimaginable battles, who had walked among stars and legends, yet had chosen a quiet life because love and humanity mattered more. The thought made her heart swell with pride. She had married a man who could have ruled worlds, who could have fought endlessly, but instead had chosen her and this life. The stars above still whispered softly at night, but they no longer felt like warnings. They were reminders of journeys past, of battles fought, and of choices made. Lyra knew that her empire might try to reclaim her one day, but she had no fear. She had Daniel, and together they had something stronger than armies and fleets. They had love, trust, and courage. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the fields in orange and purple, Lyra and Daniel sat on the old porch. Lyra leaned her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked quietly. "The stars, the empire, the battles you left behind." Daniel's eyes reflected the fading light. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But nothing in the universe is worth living without peace. And nothing in the universe is worth living without you." Lyra smiled, feeling the warmth of his words seep into her bones. She had thought she had chosen a simple life with a simple man. But now she realized that their life was extraordinary not because of grandeur or power, but because it was theirs. They spent their days quietly, yet purposefully. Daniel taught Lyra how to care for the animals, how to listen to the land, how to find joy in small victories, the growth of a seed, the first flight of a bird, the laughter of neighbors who came occasionally to visit. And Lyra taught Daniel to dream beyond the horizon, to remember that the universe was wide and full of wonders. Yet love and humanity could make even a small valley feel like the center of everything. One morning, a faint signal appeared in the sky, a ship, far away, too distant to threaten. Lyra looked at Daniel, her eyes questioning. He took her hand gently. "Let it be," he said. "We have built something they cannot touch. This life, our love, that is ours, and it is stronger than anything they could send." Years passed, and the legend of the quiet valley spread among travelers and wanderers. Some sigh,